5650 is a good solid all-around product. It's one of those good healthy products that you can plant just about anywhere because it handles just about all soils and all environments. Has pretty good test weight, very good stalks and roots. I'm always impressed by the standability and stability of 5650. It has a very good health package too, so it's really healthy as you go down the road. It can handle all those different fungicide applications, whether you're putting it on early, medium, late, wherever you want to put that fungicide on, it usually responds. But it generally doesn't get a lot of diseases in it. Has pretty good test weight. It does like water, so it's not one of those that's gonna handle a really droughty year, but in those wet years, it really tends to bring the overall average up. So 5650, available in a Smart Stack and a Double Pro. It's one of those kind of go anywhere, do anything type products. LG64C30 is a Tricepta that has tremendous yields. It's one of those that I've seen just really crank out the corn. What I like about it is it's got really good standability. It stands really well no matter what kind of environment you put it into. It can handle just about all the different soils that you can throw at it. It tends to like the better soils just a little better. It tends to respond when we put it on some heavily manured ground just because it has that high yield ability to it. It has a really nice health package too. So it doesn't necessarily respond to fungicide, but if you do put the fungicide on there, if diseases are present, it will respond in that instance. But it's one of those that I say, scout and see. It's not quite as early, bigger, jump up out of the ground kind of hybrid that we've seen in other products, but its emergence is good. I have no problem with that. It's just a little bit slower, so I would tend to put it on those deeper, darker soils. Again, it kind of likes those better soils, which tend to be the deeper, darker soils. So it does have that tremendous yield ability, so I like it on that top tier soil, maybe not necessarily on your tier 2 or hard marginal type soils. Has pretty good test weight. I do prefer to keep it south in Iowa, that Highway 30 corridor and south. As we creep up to Highway 20, it tends to not respond as well. I think it needs a lot of daylight. I think it needs a lot of growing season. And as we move it north and we shorten up those days and shorten up that season, I think it doesn't quite respond as well. So for me, 64C30 is one of those we keep south in Iowa. Otherwise, very nice high yielding product that we can put on the best ground and see how much we can grow. LG's 5643, one of those super high yielding products. It's one of those that I really like to go out and really bang a gong with. Now, it's not for every acre, but it does have a tremendous yield ability to it. One thing I'll point out, on those ears, they always tend to have a little tip back on them. That's just the genetics coming through. Now 5643 has pretty good emergence, and I like to keep it on the best soils. It's one of those high yielding, I'm not quite ready to say racehorse, but it'll remind you a lot of a racehorsey type product. The other thing with 5643 is it has pretty good stalk strength, but those roots can get a few leaners in them. And typically we see that with the ultra high yielding products, is those roots get a little bit of lean to them. So let's make sure we keep it on non-compacted soils. Keep it off of the tight clays. Put it on those really good loose soils. Give those roots every chance they can to grow down. Typically, 5643 does respond to fungicide pretty well. It has a pretty good disease package to it, and it's pretty good test weight and good emergence. So overall, very good product, one that we like to put on the best ground and really feed the nitrogen to it so that it can yield as much as it possibly can. But know that the stability and the standability on it are maybe a second choice in that respect. So give those roots every opportunity to grow down and lock into the soil, and you should have really good results. LG 62C35, really nice 112 day, and this year it's available in both a Double Pro and a Smart Stack, so it can handle that corn on corn and corn on soybean acre. 6235, nice medium stature, maybe just a little bit medium tall, but it keeps that ear at a nice height. Very healthy product. and has really good stalks. The roots, it's going to have just a few leaners in there, but it's generally not been too big a problem. We've had other products in the past that have tremendous yields, that have a few leaners, and 6235 follows that same path. Tremendous yields, few leaners. For me though, I like it on that second and third tier soils because it brings overall production up. It can really yield with the best of them, but as we move it to that second tier type soil, it seems to really respond. It can handle that tougher soil really well. Has a really good health package, you know, pretty good against disease. If you want to put some fungicide on it, I would do it if you have some disease out there because it can respond to fungicide, but it doesn't necessarily need it. LG 62CO2, one of those products that for me, really high yielding, it can handle about anything you throw at it. You can see it's got that kind of lime green color to it. As it gets closer to the physiological maturity, it does tend to green up a little bit, but it's not that deep dark blue green we see in other products out there. But don't let that fool you. It can still handle about whatever we put at it. The 62CO2, really a high yielding product, available in both Smart Stack and Double Pro. Really like it on the good ground because it has a tremendous amount of yieldability, but we can also put it on any other ground you want to. It's one of those kind of go anywhere products. The only exception for that is if you have a history of Goss's wilt, it doesn't handle Goss's wilt very well. Now I will say, I've seen it on fields that had Goss's wilt, and I've seen the 62CO2 get Goss's wilt, but it still yielded really well. So as long as the Goss's wilt isn't an epidemic, I think it can handle that pretty well. The other thing I'll say about 62CO2 is it is pretty small seeded. So you're gonna have a lot of the bags come in that 30 to 40 pound range. So if you are not interested in really small seeded, or your planter doesn't handle small seeded grain very well, let's choose another product. But if you have a planter that can handle the smaller seed really well, this is a great one to put in the lineup because it's got good health, good standability, good emergence, and great yields. LG 60C47, really cool offering because it's only available in a Smart Stack in 110 day. Now this one has tremendous yieldability to it. I mean, it's top tier yields. And when we go out there with a Smart Stack on corn, one of the toughest environments we can get to, this thing really cranks out the yield. When I saw it in research, I put it out there on the really good ground, those heavily manure, high management ground, and this thing really responded. So it's not quite as healthy as maybe some other products we have, but it will respond to fungicide very well. And in that high management situation, we tend to usually put that fungicide on. So it fits that program really well. The 60C47, pretty good standability. It handles just about all those environments, those different management styles that we do, whether it's no-till, conventional till, strip till. But I do like it on the best soils. I want to keep it off of those tougher soils just because it responds so well in the high management zones. We have other products that fit those second and third tier soils better. So on the best fields, let's put the 60C47 out there and just see how much corn we can grow. LG 60C33, one of the healthiest, best standing products we have in the lineup right now. For me, I call it the Chuck Norris of corn, just because it's so tough. It can handle just about any environment you put in it. It's super healthy. It generally won't respond to fungicide just because there's very little disease in it. It's got that nice deep dark blue-green color to it, and it carries that color all throughout the year. Has good emergence, good standability, good roots, good stalks. I mean, it's just an overall tough doing corn. I mean, Sharks have a week dedicated to 60C33. It yields very well too. And it says semi-flex, but I would say it's more of a semi-determinate. So I want to keep those populations up. And remember, it has those good stalks and roots, so it can handle those higher populations really well. I have no problem pushing those populations up to 38, even 40,000 if we're in a very high management situation. It likes water, doesn't like drought, but even in a dry year, it'll still show up and prove out very well. That 60C33, just call it Chuck Norris and plant it anywhere you want. LG's 59C72. It's kind of your everyday corn. It's one of those go anywhere, do anything type products. It's really good on emergence, so it comes up and jumps out of the ground really early. It has pretty good early vigor, although in those really extremely cold, wet soils, it will slow down. But for the most part, it will get up and get going fairly nicely. It's got a pretty good health package, although it's not super healthy like some of the other products right around it, so it will respond to fungicide. It's got pretty good stalks and roots, so standability really shouldn't be a problem for it. It's one of those that I like, more of a tier 2 type soil. It's one of those that we can put on your best ground and yield very well, put on your second best ground, yield very well, put on that marginal ground, still yields pretty good. So in our testing, we had 3 products that performed in the top 3 in most of the different categories we had, whether it's high pop, low pop, high yield, low yield, high pH, low pH, however we broke it out. And 59C72 was one of those top 3 products. So you know it's got a lot of versatility and consistency to it. And that's kind of what I like, having 59C72 in the lineup. It's that consistency down the row, from farm to farm to farm, and management practice to management practice. So 5972, you're go anywhere, do anything, all around good doing product. LG's 59C66, one of those tall, high-eared hybrids that I kind of have fallen in love with, because 59C66 really goes out, and I mean, it has tremendous yields to it. Now, I know we're all a little bit worried about these tall, high-eared products, but let me tell you, 59C66 has really good roots and really good stalks, and it tends to hold itself together really well. Now, it is a little weak on gosses, but other than that, it's got a really nice health package. The big takeaway with 59C66 is it really needs nitrogen. It's one of those high management type products. As long as you're feeding the nitrogen to it, it will respond. I mean, it's a big rangy product, but it has a tremendous amount of yieldability to it. Again, when I was talking, we have these top 3 products in the zone that we tested, and no matter how we broke them out, 59C66 was one of the top 3. For Iowa, it has tremendous yields. And we put it on that good ground, maybe even add a little side dress nitrogen to it, and it'll convert it directly into grain right here. Super product, maybe not for everybody, but if you really aren't afraid of that tall, high-eared product that can stand, and you're not afraid to really put the nitrogen to it, this one's gonna perform very well. I like it Highway 30 and south. We don't need to take it nearly as far north just because it is that big, tall, rangy product. And I don't want it to get super tall and then run out of gas at the end of the year. Let's keep it in that Highway 30 corridor and south. Give it some nitrogen and see how much corn you can grow. LG's 57C97. Really an up-and-comer, a really new one that has generated a lot of excitement throughout LG. A nice 107-day double pro. Now, this one is one of those that when I talk about those top 3 in that yield class, those top 3 in that research trials, 57C97 was one of them. 107 day, yielding with 109, 110 days. No matter how we slice it, it's one of the top 3. Tremendous yieldability, but that's not all, because 57C97 is very healthy too. It has pretty good stalks and roots, but man, it's that deep dark blue-green that we love to see out there in the field. Not only does it have that tremendous yieldability, but it can handle just about every soil we throw at it. It doesn't have to be on the best dirt. It doesn't have to be on, super well-drained powdered tile type ground. You can put it on just about all different soils and it responds very well. Now, where does it do the best? Of course, it has that yieldability, right? It does the best on the best ground. When we have those high management situations, that's when it performs the best. But it can handle just about anything we throw at it. A newcomer, a rookie, from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be the real deal. At 107-day VT2, it's one of those I like following soybeans. Put it out there, and let's see how much corn we can grow with this one. Here we have LG's 57C33. Nice looking product. It can stretch a little bit tall, but it doesn't get crazy. It keeps that ear right where you want it, you know, right below the shoulder, so you can get the snout under it and pick it. It's available in a smart stack, so it lends itself towards those corn on corn acres, which works really well because it's got a pretty good health package to it. It will respond to fungicide. It has pretty good standability in it, but I do want to keep it off of the compacted acres. I want to keep it off of those tight clays, and let's let those roots get down and grow. I haven't seen any problems with standability, but I just want to make sure we give those roots every opportunity to grow down. I did a root dig earlier this summer and compared the 57C33 roots with a lot of others, and it does have a really nice root system under it. So don't be afraid. I just want to make sure we get those roots down and get them growing. 57C33 has pretty good test weight, really good emergence, can handle just about any soil we want to, as long as it's not that tight compacted stuff. For me, I think it's going to replace that 5525, that mid-season stack acre, just because it's tough enough to handle just about any scenario we put it under. So for me, I like it on just about everywhere we want to put that corn on corn acre in that mid group. It's one of the best ones we have. 57C33, this is the one that I'm going to put the corn on corn in that. 5525. Now today I'm going to talk about the VT2 because we have other products in the lineup in the Smart Stack that I think are better and more applicable in Iowa. So for us, let's focus on the VT2 version of LG's 5525. When we talk about 5525, it's our #1 seller for a reason, because of the top yields. This thing has crazy amount of yield to it. Now it does tend to like a little bit of a higher management system. It responds well. When we have more nitrogen, it converts it directly into kernels. When we treat it with fungicide, it converts it into kernels. It's one of those that if you feed it and you give it some tender loving care, it's going to respond really well. So for me, it's a really good product to put out there. Even when we put it on our second tier soil, most of the time, it's the most that field has ever yielded. So I want to keep it off that marginal type soil because we do have better products for that marginal type soil. But I'd rather keep it on the best ground because I know it has that tremendous yieldability to it. It can really crank out the corn. And that's why I like it just about everywhere, as long as we keep the nitrogen to it, add a little fungicide. It has pretty good standability. So it's #1 for a reason. It's because it deserves it. It's that high yielding. LG's 54C76, a nice new addition to the lineup. Really kind of a racehorsey type product. Has tremendous yields. As long as you don't ever stress it, if this corn never has a bad day, man, the yields are unlimited. But if you start getting a little stress in there, it can fall back a little bit. So it's not for every acre, but it does have a really nice health package, and it does have good roots and good stalks. It just responds very well in those high management situations. This is one that we just really go out and we crank it through because it has a lot of yield to it. It really loves Iowa, Illinois. That's where it did the best. And so in eastern Iowa, we're right in the heart of where the 54C76 did really good. So I'm excited to have this out there. I want to keep it on the best soils, those loose soils. I don't want it on any compacted soils. I want to keep it out there in that environment that's going to give it the best opportunity to grow and not have any stress. So it doesn't like stress, but man, when we have it on good ground, it can really crank out the yields. LG's 54C11, a really nice new 104-day that comes in an Agrisure Duracade 5222EZ Refuge. The 54C11 is really an all-around good versatile type product. It's one of those that holds itself together pretty well in the fall. Last year I saw it all the way from Iowa City up to Mason City in Iowa, and it performed equally well in both those places and everywhere in between. It's a nice consistent product as I take it from soil to soil to soil. And from management practice to management practice, I like that consistency, that versatility that 54C11 does. Now, it's not as healthy as maybe some other products, but it does tend to hold itself together pretty well, and it can respond to fungicide. It has good stalks and good roots. It has really good stability to it. So I like that it can yield, it can stand, it has that Duracade in it, and it's versatile. So for me, it's one of those that we can add in a lot of different scenarios. We can bring it in on the bottom side if we want some early corn early, or if we want to move it north, we can move it all the way up to the Minnesota line and have a really good product to handle those middle tier and marginal type soils. It does have a lot of yieldability to it. There's a few other things out there that'll out yield it, but for me, I want consistency and versatility when I'm going out there from row to row to row. And 54C11, I'll bring that to the table. LG's 51C48, really the new big dog in that early lineup. Coming in at 101 day, it's available in a Smart Stack and a Double Pro. The 51C48 jumps up out of the ground. Tremendous early vigor, tremendous emergence. It's one of those on the early side that's a little bit different because it does get up out of the ground. Cold, wet soils, it don't care. Plant it early, it don't care. 51C48 is going to get up and get growing. That's what I like about it so much. It does tend to like a lot of nitrogen. It's one of those that we put it on the best ground, put a little high management into it, it's going to respond very well. Even as we move it to the tier 2 and tier 3 soils, our mid groups and our marginal type soils, it handles those very well as long as it has nitrogen. It's one of those that will convert that nitrogen directly into the ear. It's got a pretty good health package and nice standability. I don't have to worry about the roots or the stalks too much on it at all. It's got a pretty nice health package to it. It's one of those you kind of scout and see. It can respond to fungicide if we do have some disease present, but it's also one, if you have somebody that maybe doesn't necessarily like to spray fungicide, you can throw it at them and let's see how it goes. The 51C48 does have a lot of tremendous yieldability. It's beating the old dogs out there, and it's kind of the new big dog in that early market. And I like it so much because it has that early emergence. It can be the first thing we plant, the last thing we harvest, and be happy all the way to the bank. LG's 47C77, a really awesome new product in that early 97-day market. It's available as a stack and a Double Pro. The 47C77 has really good roots and really good stalks. Has nice standability to it. Has a pretty good health package too. Now you'll notice it's a little bit of a taller product, medium tall, but it brings that ear up a little higher. And that lends itself, as we get into northeast Iowa, to those hills, because it'll keep that ear up higher. And when it matures and swings down, we can still get the snout under it. It handles those hills really well. The other thing I like about the 47C77 is when we put it on the best ground, when we separated out the data and we're on 240 plot average, I mean tremendous yields. This thing came in 3rd place. It's one of the top 3. And then I separate that and I look at the other end of the spectrum. Well, how did this do on the poorer soils, on those tougher soils? Well, down there, it was ranked number 1. And it was ranked number 1 by 8 bushels. It was 8 bushels better than the next best thing. That tells me it has a lot of consistency and versatility. We can put it on good ground, on that tier 2 type soil, or we can put it on that type 3 marginal type soil, and it's going to bring the overall production up. Because at the end of the day, it's how many pounds of corn you sell for the total farming operation. That's how you make profit. And the 47C77, it can really crank out the yields on good ground and poor ground. Now, the one thing with 47C77, it has a slower emergence, slower early vigor. It's going to remind you a lot of that 5505 acre. It's maybe not quite as bad as a 5505 stack, but it is slow. And so I want to make sure we keep it on the back half of the planting cycle, or we put it on the darker dirt dirt that's already warming up. That'll give it its best chance to get out and grow. I haven't had any problems with it, but I just want to make sure that we are ahead of the ball game, being proactive. Because the 47C77, I can't argue with the yields on it, and it's a versatile go anywhere, do anything type product. But I want to make sure we give it its best foot forward. Keep it on the darker, warmer type soils, and it's going to really respond very well. LG Seeds 1838 Roundup Xtend beans. A really complete package of a bean that combines some high yield with a great agronomic package. It's got really good emergence and really good standability. As a pretty nice plant type because it's a little bit taller and a little bit thinner, so it really lends itself to those narrower rows, but yet can still handle a 30-inch row very nicely. It has a really good Phytophthora genes, so it actually has the RPS 3A and the 1A, which gives it a little broader spectrum when it comes to that protection from Phytophthora. It's really rated very well on brown stem rot, sudden death, and white mold. It can handle poorly drained soils, those tougher soils, or the really high yielding productive soils as well. For an early bean in that 1.8 maturity, I like it on the best ground because I think that's where it has the most yieldability to it. But you can plant it about anywhere. LG Seeds 2007 Xtend soybean. For me, this is a really nice workhorse type bean. Now, it can handle a lot of different soil types very well. I like it on that tier 2, tier 3 type soil, just because it has that really good agronomic package to it. However, sometimes it'll surprise you and actually win the plot. But it has a really nice agronomic package. So it has good standability, good emergence. It's got that medium tall type size to it, and it's a little thinner, so it does lend itself towards those narrower rows, but handles 30-inch rows really well also. It's very highly rated on Phytophthora, brown stem rot. It can handle those higher pHs out there. It also is very good against white mold and sudden death. It also, for that Phytophthora gene, it has RPS 3A and 1A, so it has a pretty broad range on those different races of Phytophthora. It can handle your poorly drained soils, your marginal soils, productive soils. It's adapted to no-till very well. It's got good early vigor for those early plantings. The 2007 Xtend soybean is really that kind of workhorse, go anywhere type product. I've got other products on both sides that maybe have a little bit more yield punch to it, but this is that good, consistent, versatile type product. LG Seeds 2417 soybean. It's an Xtend bean that we have in the lineup right now. For me, in northeast Iowa, I like it a little more on that racehorsey type ground. It has a few higher highs, but it also has a few lower lows versus the 2444s. Has a pretty good agronomic package to it, so don't let that fool you. The racehorsiness in it, it also carries some good agronomics with it as well. Now, it doesn't have a Phytophthora gene in it, but it has really good field tolerance. And that's really key, because if you have a race out there in the field that doesn't get controlled by RPS 1C or 3A or 1A, this thing has a pretty good field tolerance, and it can handle those Phytophthora fields that maybe some of the other soybeans don't get because they're genetic resistance. But it does have that nice medium size to it. It's not going to get super rank and super tall, but it is a little bit wider as you go down the row. So the 2417's a little bit more of that racehorse. I like to keep it on the best ground because it does have a lot of yieldability to it. LG Seeds 2444 Xtend soybean. For me, it's kind of my go-to bean. It's one of our most popular in the Group 2s. I like it because it's so consistent and so versatile. I have no problem planting it about anywhere. It can handle poorly drained soils, marginal soils, productive soils, all equally well. It's very consistent as you go from farm practice to farm practice and field to field. It's got really good emergence, really good standability, and it's not very tall. It's more of a medium, a true medium. So
The 2417s might be a little taller. These are in that true medium, but it does branch out and bush out a little bit so that it can cover a 30-inch row. Now, it has the RPS1C Phytophthora gene, which covers a very big broad spectrum of races. It also has a very good rating against brown stem rot, IDC, which are your high pH type soils. It's good against white mold as well as sudden death. So it's got good emergence, good standability. It's just an all-around good doing bean. And if you've seen it around, you'll know it gets planted in a lot of different places. I have a lot of confidence in the consistency of the 2444s. That's why it's usually the first one I talk about when I'm on the farm. 2444 Extend. You're going anywhere, do anything bean. LG Seeds 2627 Extend soybean. A really nice addition to that mid-group 2 lineup. Now this is a little bit more of a racehorsey type bean, just because it has a tremendous amount of yield to it. And there's a few places I wouldn't put it. But it does bring a lot of yield to it, which is an improvement over the mid-groups we've had before. It has a really nice disease package to it, as it has a very good white mold and brown stem rot score. However, it's maybe not quite as good on sudden death as I'd like to see. I would avoid putting it on high pH soils, as it's not rated very well for IDC. It is a little bit taller of a bean, not super tall, it's still a medium tall, but it's going to remind you of a taller bean, but it does branch out quite a bit. And I think those branches are what brings a lot of yield to the table. It's not rated very well for those poorly drained soils, so let's keep it on those well-drained soils. It's one of those, if a field has a history of heavy manure, maybe it's got some organic matter to it, that's perfect for this guy. It's really going to like that highly productive soil. So I'd keep it on the best soils and let that racehorse in it just get out and run, because I think it does have a lot of yieldability to it. So the 2627 Extend, kind of your higher production, high management type bean. LG Seeds 2888 Extend soybean. Really kind of the heavy hitter in the group 2. This is the one that has, I would say, the most yield out of anything. It's also the most versatile. You can put it just about anywhere you want it. Poorly drained soils, marginal soils, the best soils you've got. It can handle those emergent and early vigor type situations if we get into no-till. It is a 2.8 bean, so it's at the later end of the group 2s. But don't let that fool you. It's got a tremendous amount of yieldability as well as agronomics to go with it. It's rated very well against Phytophthora, as it has the RPS1K gene and a very good field tolerance. It's very good against brown stem rot, and it can handle IDC and white mold situations pretty well. But it's really good against sudden death. It's a very healthy bean that can handle about anything we put at it. It gets a little bit taller in that medium tall category, but it also has those branches. Now one thing you'll notice, when it gets there and it finishes, it'll start to get a little floppy, not bad, but those branches with all those pods on it start weighing it down and it gets tippy. But after it loses its leaves and it loses those petioles, it seems to stand back up. I haven't had anybody complain about harvesting 2888s, probably because the yields are so big. LG Seeds 3060 Extend soybean. A really nice group 3 bean right at the 3.0. It's for me, it's a little bit more of a workhorse type bean, although it has a lot of yield to it. It can yield right up there with the 3297s. But it doesn't have a Phytophthora gene in it, but it's got pretty good field tolerance. It can handle the BSR, the brown stem rots, and it's got pretty good disease resistance against your white molds and your sudden death. It has really nice early vigor. It absolutely loves no-till. It can handle that no-till situation. Its emergence is slow but very consistent, so it will get up out of the ground. Don't worry about that. It's a medium tall, but it's really wide, so it handles that 30-inch row very well. I keep it on my second tier and my productive type soils. Those are the two places I'd like it. I probably don't want to put it on those poorly drained soils. It's got that attractive wide profile on it that has really good standability. All right, So it has that good stress tolerance factor to it, which lends itself to that workhorse type situation. So the 3060 Xtend soybean from LG, a really nice addition on your second tier type soils. LG's 3202 Xtend soybean. It's a really nice all-around good doing product. Now, it's got that medium tall, medium bush kind of look to it, so it doesn't get super tall, but it does handle itself well in pretty much all different row scenarios. It's got sulfonylurea tolerance in it in case we have some issues with the sulfonylurea chemistry, and we can use that to our advantage. It's got really good emergence, really good early vigor, so it can get up out of the ground, plant it early, that kind of thing. It has good disease tolerance too, although not highly rated for high pH or white mold. We generally don't get that when we're planting in the southern part of the territory. It can handle all the different kind of soil scenarios we have. Poorly drained, marginal, really good ground. For me, I like it on that mid group, that tier 2, tier 3 type soil. It is a workhorse, but it's got a lot of yield to it too. The 3202 is a really good product to add into the mix. Whether you're adding it in with the 2888s or the 3555s, it's a great companion. LG Seeds 3550, just one of those historically dominant type products. Right there in the mid group 5, absolutely sitting where it needs to be. It really has a great yield package and a great agronomic package too, because it's very highly rated on sudden death, frog eye, white mold, IDC. I really don't have any problem putting it anywhere. It's also rated very good on all your different soils, so poorly drained, marginal, highly productive. For me, I like it on that highly productive soil just because it has so much yieldability to it. Now, it's not super tall, it's more in that medium tall category, but it does branch out very well, so it can handle all the different row spacings we have. So the 3550, that's my lead product in the group 3s. That's what I'm starting with, and I'm adding in things around it. But the 3550 just has so much yieldability. It's that proven historical dominance that I like with it. Put it on your best ground and just see how many beans you can grow.